The N64 had a huge list of strong arcade racing games, and I've already covered a few on my channel like the Rush series and Beetle Adventure Racing and even Cruisin' USA. But there's one cross-platform racing game that never seems to get much love on any of the systems it released on. Revolt. While I'll be talking about the N64 version of the game, that doesn't mean I think this is the definitive version. Far from it, actually. The N64 version is just the only copy of the game I have, so we're playing it here, and we'll touch on some version differences as we go on. Revolt feels unlike any other racing game I've played before because it manages to capture the feel of what driving a remote control car is like at full speed, constantly on the verge of losing control and spinning out. And while I think that's really cool, it's likely a bit polarizing to people picking it up for the first time, because it can feel so totally different. But to me, this game nails the style and feel that it's going for in every category. But let's look at how this game executes this well in car selection and the car stats, difficulty, and track design. By the time you complete Revolt, you'll have amassed a collection of over a couple of dozen cars, which is great on its own, but it's only improved by the fact that each car handles and drives totally differently from every other car on the list. Each vehicle is marked with 4 different stat categories: speed, acceleration, mass or weight, and transmission. Each car is also broken up into its own difficulty rating that tells you how hard it is to control. Considering each of the vehicle's stats is incredibly important when it comes to looking at the tracks you're going to be facing. If you anticipate a lot of straightaways, you can pull ahead with a car with a high top speed. If there's a lot of U-turns, go with acceleration. Weight is an interesting stat to consider because it determines how much the weapons thrown by opponents affect you. If you choose a heavy car like the Fat Slug, you'll be relatively safe no matter what hits you. However, the Fat Slug lives up to its name as you'll be trading speed and acceleration for that stability. If you choose a fast car with little weighing it down, you're gonna go flying when you're hit with a water balloon or a firework. I played and completed all the circuits before sitting down to research this video, and I was blown away by how much thought and care went into crafting these vehicles in order to make every single one of them feel different from one another. No matter what car you choose, each car feels small in the scope of the world. In a genre where a lot of cars handle similarly to cars in real life, or an arcadey version of their real-life counterparts, these RC cars handle like that RC car you got on your birthday in 2001. They turn on a dime, especially if you choose a car with 4-wheel drive. I came across this section on the official fandom wiki that explains how each car is built using multiple parts that give each car their own unique feel and collision detection. These wheels in the body have separate collision detection, which means cars with wheels that protrude out from the body actually hook onto the wheels of other cars or catch on obstacles and get tangled up if you choose higher difficulties. This creates a really authentic chain of events when cars start bumping into each other and their wheels get caught and they inevitably bind and spin out. Each vehicle also has suspension, which affects how the car will handle rough terrain. The developers really went the extra mile, and the game is better for it. I mentioned the difficulty earlier. There are a variety of levels to choose from when you're starting a race, which is granted nothing new. But instead of making the game easy to hard, I find that the simulation style of play is where you should start, and choosing a difficulty below that removes different physics to make the game more forgiving. The simulation difficulty lets the cars travel at full speed and lets you experience those realistic collisions I praised earlier, while lowering the difficulty makes collisions less invasive and slows the cars down the further down you take the difficulty. Additionally, when you choose a car, that vehicle's assigned rating will determine the level of opponents you race against. So while I preferred racing on simulation to get the full speed and difficult collisions, choosing one of the base cars makes placing in the championships much easier than choosing one of the cars you're awarded with later on. All these different settings give you a lot of control over the experience you want to have and makes the game very approachable to newcomers. We've talked about the cars and the physics and how good they are, but let's finally talk about what puts this game over the edge into great for me, and that is the atmosphere and track design. This game is about remote control cars and the joy of driving them against your friends, from the time you choose your own from the shop to the time you start racing them. From the moment you turn on Revolt, you're in a toy store, and the anticipation builds as you get to choose what you're going to play, as well as what you're going to be racing with as you peruse the boxes of cars. And what's that? The store has more inventory that isn't available yet, and you might be able to get more cool toys down the road? That sounds freaking sweet. But the thrill doesn't stop there. Each of these tracks are cleverly designed to be played in 3 different ways: forward, reverse, and mirrored, which emulates the creativity of using the space you have to make fun, memorable racing courses with your friends. You've got different locations to race in, like the neighborhood and the botanical gardens and Toyland. The neighborhood gives that feeling of all the kids from the cul-de-sac getting together to race their remote controls around. Toyland feels like you're trying out your RC car before you leave the shop, and you're trying to choose the perfect one for you. This game really captures that specific feeling of competition and pride you had in your childhood RC car because you knew it was better than everyone else's, and all you had to do was race them to prove it. These tracks make the cars feel appropriately small, and there isn't a single track that makes the cars feel life-sized, which is an important contributing factor to this game's immersion. The power-ups in each of these levels also match the tone very well in that I can totally imagine the kids who weren't playing tossing water balloons or balls in the way to block your path. I can even see that one awful kid who no one liked shooting a bottle rocket at your cars to try to destroy them. There is really only one racing environment I don't understand, and that's the ghost town. In a game where you can imagine some kids getting into trouble racing RC cars in a museum or at a supermarket, why is there a spaghetti western town with a hanging post included here? Like, it's not a bad place to race or anything, it's well designed, it's just, why? There were some moments where poorer lit tracks were literally impossible to see, and after turning off the lights in my room, shutting the shades, and boosting the brightness on my TV to the max, I found it really hard to see specific turns in the museum, which made it really tough to deal with. There's also an added stunt arena where you can try to get all the bonus stars to unlock even more cars. But now let's get into some version differences. The PlayStation 1 is considered the worst place to play the game because the graphics are worse than all of the other ports. It does have a couple of upsides though, and that's an extra pack of cars to unlock and extra pre-made create-a-track stages called LEGO tracks made by Acclaim. The N64 version, which I can speak on most, was an alright place to play. The graphics were alright, but nothing to write home about, and the constant issue of cross-platform games on the N64 means the sound effects are compressed to death. Luckily, since the soundtrack is original as opposed to licensed music, you're not getting that butchered music feel like other games on the platform. I noticed that at random points when a lot was happening on screen, the frame rate dipped a lot, even though there were only 4 cars on the screen at once. It didn't really take me out of the game because it usually happened when I was blown up by a power-up, so it was back to full speed once I straightened out. It was just something I noticed and thought was worth mentioning. Also, where other versions have cheat codes where you can enter a player name to unlock cars and tracks, some of these codes are missing from the N64 version, but you do have the option to use the Game Shark to fill in the gaps. The Dreamcast version is considered the best console port to play because it had graphics comparable to the PC port of the game at the time, as well as unique loading screens and an altered track editor mode. It also has an exclusive track called Rooftop and extra cars to unlock. The PC port is the definitive way to play by far because when it came out, you could play multiplayer with up to 16 other cars. But it remains the definitive version because it is still supported by a ravenous community of die-hard fans. And if you look in the description of the video, you can find a link that will let you download the assets and engine so you can get to playing the game for yourself for free. Don't say I never did anything for you. Now that this game is abandonware, you can just snag it and play it on a Windows or Linux PC, and if you do play, have fun and come back and tell me what you think. Also, I don't have a PC, so you'll just have to have fun without me. But with this community, there have been mods galore that give the game a fresh set of content every few months or so in the form of new cars, and they even patched in the Dreamcast exclusive rooftop level that you can play now. But that's Revolt in a nutshell. It's a cult classic game that was overlooked when it came out, but has managed to survive through Acclaim's closure with a rabid fanbase who is still adding content and mods to it more than 20 years after it was released. And with how easy it is to access and play now, you might as well give it a shot. But if you made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, be sure to leave a like on it. If you want to see more stuff like this, why don't you hit the subscribe button? I got videos coming out all the time, and I'm working on a pretty big project now that should be out pretty soon. And lastly, if you played Revolt, or if you end up going to the download link in the description, and you play it yourself, let me know what you think. But thanks again for watching, I really appreciate it, and have a great rest of your week.